then.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so compression, distraction, torsion, shear, using your passive activating forces in order. As we've already talked about, you're not going to get them all in each position. So if we talk about the GH joint, right? Everybody agrees this is relative compression, right? It's relative compression, and that's relative traction, relative, right? Or if I wanted to turn it up, I could do that, but look at everything else, right? So if I contact him a little bit better, I may be able to get a little bit more control out of the traction, right? So I pull him around less, but it's not particularly well controlled. Everybody can see that. There's a lot of auxiliary movement. Even when I do this, it's still there, right? So if I wanted to do some traction for some reason, I would get him into position where almost everything's a little bit soft, and I can do a little bit better traction there, right? Compression will happen there, right? This is torsion. Everybody agrees that's torsion. And then can I get shear, or can I get essentially AB and adduction, right? I can't really get shear. So depending on the terms that you use, if you stick strictly to those terms, sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't, because you can't get all of the movements in those ways. So if you pick any particular structure in the body and you try to get your activating forces in different positions, you will immediately learn that you can't get them all. There are trade-offs, as always. But the same concept applies. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that to really kind of get the joint and the particular individual to be able to free up and get a little bit more movement. So when I do this, this is going to require him commenting. When I do this, it feels really good. I can kind of get you to do whatever I want, right? If I go here, I can't, right? If I bend the elbow a little bit, it changes it. It doesn't feel as comfortable anymore, correct? Yeah. Right? So the way that I know that it doesn't feel as comfortable is once I bend it, I feel tension build under my hand. My hand, not particularly visible, but it's broad. There's lots of gaps. There's a gap here. There's a gap between this finger and my thumb, but I get a good general sense. Right. And you like traction more, is that fair? Feels more comfortable. So when you're trying to soften things or get things to be more comfortable, you would think that approximating or compressing would often make everything soften, and it just doesn't. It does sometimes, and it doesn't other times. That's why you always have to pay attention to how they respond. So we'll have you on your side. Does somebody have a big pillow that they could pass to me, please? Thank you so much. Okay, so just lay on your side facing that way. Right, so here, compression, distraction, right, torsion, and interestingly, I can get a little bit more shear here for the GH joint. Make sense? I can get, so I can pin the humerus and I can move the scapula, or I can pin the scapula and move the humerus. So these are more like glides. So I can get a little bit more of it here. Right? So sometimes you're going to have to just tune into that particular individual a little bit more, right? So you'd say that's a pretty decent position where everything feels sort of soft. Yeah. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about an indirect thing. You kind of get the position to a place where all parameters soften. So in this case, my hand actually has a much better hold. So my fingers are more together. There's less gaps, so I have a lot of information. No, you don't like that, right? Where that doesn't do much good or bad, right? Just there. That feels real nice. Yeah. Like there's not much happening. You'd be really comfortable. Now, if I wanted to say go this way, it's okay, but a little further, it starts to give us a little bit of feedback. Fair? I can get a good amount of range. Now, see, I drop a little bit more. So if I keep going this way, it gives us feedback. But if I draw, sorry, that was too fast. If I drop it that way, there's not much happening. You agree? Yeah. So the whole point of me asking for him to agree is because I need to know, I need to build my framework of what I feel versus what he can report to me, right? So that's where, over time, when you do that often enough, we get the patient-centered feedback. The patient feedback, both physically and verbally or cognitively through verbal expression, really ends up mattering. Now, could I just do this and say that I'm getting it all, right? could I do this? Could I just go into Spencer's, right? Like, so, little ice cream cone, big ice cream cone, little ice cream cone with compression, with distraction, right? I could just go through all those steps. Or I could say, you know what? The stuff that's given this guy's shoulder a problem is probably going to respond really good if I start here, right? That's about the spot. That feels pretty good. Yeah. Now, right? Top hand can do stuff. Hand on arm can do stuff. And I can explore and figure out how he responds. So you can see, I can teach this. Or I can say, you know what? There. That's how I'd work on him. Right? And you agree that's much more comfortable. I'd get much more of what I wanted out of that. Right? So no matter what method somebody wants to teach you, having an organized way to go about it, compression, distraction, torsion, shear, it won't always be available in those, to use those terms. It won't not all of them will be available in each position, but what's always available is my ability to tune into him and get him to give me feedback. That sounds reasonable to everybody. Now, I don't know how technically instructive that is, as to put your hand here, do this, do that. It's more, you've got to match what's comfortable for you, what works for them, and how they respond. It's much more about that than it is about this is how you hold it. You hold with as much contact as you can have, you stay as close to the patient as you can, in whatever position you're in, and you try to be organized, or as organized as you can in how you add those activating forces. If you add compression and you get kickback, the muscles turn on a little bit, it's the wrong one. If you add traction and the muscles turn on or contract a bit, it's the wrong one. A little bit of rotation here and there, a little bit of side bending, a little bit of slide or shear, whatever works to get you as into a place where the patient doesn't respond a ton with active contraction is probably where you want to start, and then you can explore from there. Right? So a term that can be used is position for correction, but that term often means, I'd put him here and then I'd make him go active, like turn your torso forwards, right? Something like that, and then let it relax, or push your opposite shoulder down on the table. That does nothing, right? That sort of position. So you go into the diagnosis and then you work from there. What I would say is tune into the patient a little bit better. So if I was working here, this feels like that's a decent spot. Maybe a little bit of tension. It could be better.
Yeah, a little bit.
There. Better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, like I got an elbow high position. This is a little hard on me, but it would be short term. Now, if I do compression here, this doesn't bother you. It doesn't really add anything, but it doesn't bother you now. Whereas if I was up here and I had compression, right, that's not bad. So maybe it changed. But if I had compression here, it's no good. Yeah, right. So depending on where you are, each thing is going to do something slightly different. So you can have the idea that compression will always make it soften, but it doesn't. Right? You can have the idea that this will always do this, but it doesn't. Right? Hopefully that helps it make more sense. You can't feel this, and you sort of can't see it. You can just see that I'm doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then I ask him a question, and he either agrees with me or he doesn't. But for the most part, when I say no good, he's like, yeah, no good. When I say good, he's like, yeah, good. You build that by getting the feedback from them based on what you're finding. You make the assumption, okay, this is not good. And then you ask, is this not good? And they'll say yes or no. And then if you say, oh, it's nice, everything feels nice and soft, and then you ask them, does this feel comfortable? And they say yes, there you go. That's how you build your understanding of palpatory feedback relating relatively well to patient cognitive feedback and internal sensation. Right? So you have to trust that they're telling you the truth, because they probably are, but sometimes they might lie because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Right? That's all there. So anyways, hopefully that's useful. So you push that button.